Something unusual is happening right now, and the fact that you're here at this exact moment is not as random as it seems. You didn't just come across this by accident, and deep down, there's a part of you that already feels that. Because lately, something has been pulling your attention back toward a situation you thought was completely over. You told yourself it was done. You accepted the silence. You made peace with the idea that whatever that door represented, an opportunity, a connection, a path, it was no longer meant for you. But now, something feels different, even if you can't fully explain it yet. There's a subtle shift, a quiet change in the energy around that situation, like something is slowly coming back into focus. And your heart needs this right now, because what you dismissed as final may not have been final at all. Sometimes endings are not permanent. They are pauses, moments where everything steps back before moving forward again in a different way. And listen carefully. This is not about going backward. This is about something returning in a form you didn't expect. The reason this moment matters is because it won't stay open forever. There are windows in life that appear quietly, without warning, and if you're not aware, you can miss them completely. That's why this message is reaching you now, because something is starting to open again, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that requires your attention and your awareness. You don't need to force anything, and you don't need to rush, but you do need to notice. Because what you once believed was closed forever is no longer as closed as it seemed. What you couldn't see before is exactly why you believed it was over. When nothing changes for a long time, your mind starts creating its own conclusions. You begin to tell yourself that silence means finality, that distance means disconnection, that closed doors are meant to stay closed forever. And slowly, without even realizing it, you train yourself to stop expecting anything different. You stop looking for signs. You stop paying attention. You convince yourself that moving on is the only logical choice. But what you didn't realize is that just because something disappeared from your view doesn't mean it stopped existing altogether. Some things don't end. They simply move out of sight while something deeper is being worked on. And your heart needs this right now, because the situation you gave up on didn't remain the same during that silence. It was shifting, adjusting, evolving in ways you weren't aware of. Because not everything unfolds where you can see it happening. There are moments in life where progress becomes invisible, where change happens quietly beneath the surface, where timing is being recalibrated without any external signs. And listen carefully. What felt like nothing happening was actually a period of separation between what was and what needs to be. Sometimes a door doesn't close to remove something from your life. It closes to reset it. It closes to correct what wasn't aligned. It closes to pause what wasn't ready. And during that pause, things are being rearranged, pieces are being moved, circumstances are being reshaped so that if that door opens again, it won't lead to the same outcome as before. That's why this moment matters. Because if you only rely on what you saw in the past, you will miss what is beginning to form now. You'll assume it's still the same situation, the same outcome, the same ending, but it's not. Something has changed within it, even if that change hasn't fully revealed itself yet. And this is where awareness becomes important. Because the shift doesn't always come with an announcement. It doesn't always arrive in a way that demands your attention. Sometimes it shows up quietly, subtly, almost in a way that can be easily ignored if you're not present enough to notice it. And your heart needs this right now, because you are standing in a moment where something that once felt completely finished is slowly coming back into motion. Not in the same way, not for the same reason, but with a different purpose. And if you remain stuck in the belief that it's still closed, you might overlook the very signs that are trying to show you otherwise. The reason that door closed in the first place is something you didn't fully understand at the time. And if you're honest with yourself, it probably left you with more questions than answers. You may have replayed the situation over and over, trying to figure out what went wrong, what you could have done differently, or why things ended the way they did. And when no clear explanation came, you were forced to accept it as it was, even if it didn't make sense. But what you're beginning to realize now, what your heart needs to understand at a deeper level, is that not every closed door is a mistake, and not every ending is a loss. Sometimes a door closes because something about it wasn't complete yet. Maybe the timing wasn't aligned, maybe the people involved weren't ready, maybe the circumstances weren't stable enough to support what it was meant to become. And even though it felt right to you in that moment, there were factors you couldn't see, details you weren't aware of, outcomes that hadn't fully formed yet. And listen carefully, if that door had stayed open back then, it might not have led to what you thought it would. It might have created confusion instead of clarity, instability instead of growth, disappointment instead of fulfillment. So what felt like rejection was actually interruption, a necessary pause that prevented something incomplete from moving forward too soon. And your heart needs this right now because it changes the way you see what happened. It wasn't taken away from you, it was held back for a reason. There were things that needed to shift, both within the situation and within you. There were lessons that had to unfold, awareness that had to grow, perspectives that had to change. And even though that process wasn't easy, even though it forced you to step away from something you once believed in, it created space for something more aligned to develop. Because when something is truly meant to return, it doesn't come back in the same condition it left in. It comes back refined, adjusted, corrected in ways that make it stronger than it was before. And that's what's important to understand right now. The closure you experienced wasn't final, it was formative. It was shaping the outcome in ways you couldn't recognize at the time. It was creating distance so that transformation could take place without interference. And during that distance, everything involved had the chance to evolve. You changed, your understanding deepened, your expectations became clearer. And whatever that door represented began shifting as well, even if you weren't there to witness it. And this is why you can't approach it the same way now. Because if it opens again, it's not an invitation to repeat the past. It's an opportunity to experience something different. But that difference only matters if you recognize it. If you remain stuck in how things used to be, you'll miss what they've become. And your heart needs this right now, because this moment is not about going backward. It's about understanding why things had to pause in the first place. Once you see that clearly, you'll stop viewing that closed door as something that ended your path, and start seeing it as something that redirected it, protected it, and prepared it for a version that's finally ready to unfold. Now this is the moment where everything begins to shift in a way that you can finally start to notice, even if it's still subtle at first. Because what is happening right now is not loud, it's not dramatic, and it's not designed to immediately grab your attention, but it is real. The same situation you once accepted as finished is quietly moving again, and if you're paying close enough attention, you can start to feel it. There's a difference now. Something that wasn't there before. It may show up as a thought that keeps returning, a small change in communication, a new opportunity that feels strangely familiar, or even a sense that something unfinished is trying to come back into your awareness. And your heart needs this right now, because this is how these moments often begin, not with certainty, but with subtle signs that something is reopening. And listen carefully, this is not the past repeating itself. This is not a cycle restarting in the same way it ended before. What is coming back carries a different energy, a different foundation, a different level of alignment that wasn't present before. Because during the time that door was closed, things didn't stay the same. Growth happened, adjustments were made, and what once felt unstable has been given time to correct itself. That's why this moment requires your awareness. Because if you approach it with the same mindset, the same expectations, the same assumptions you had before, you might misread what is happening now. You might dismiss it, thinking it's just a coincidence or something temporary, when in reality, it's something that has been carefully realigned to return at the right time. And your heart needs this right now, because timing changes everything. What didn't work before can work now under different conditions. What felt impossible before can become natural when everything is aligned properly. But this only matters if you recognize the shift while it's happening. Because opportunities like this don't always stay open long enough for hesitation. They appear quietly, they test your awareness, and they respond to your willingness to engage with them differently than before. So don't rush, but don't ignore it either. Stay present, stay aware, because what is unfolding right now is not random. It's a continuation of something that was paused, not ended. And this time, it's returning in a form that has the potential to move forward instead of falling apart. Now, everything comes down to this moment. Because recognizing that something is reopening is only part of the process. The real question is how you respond to it. And your heart needs this right now, because this is where most people lose the opportunity without even realizing it. Not because the door wasn't real, not because the timing wasn't right, but because they approached it the same way they did before. They carried the same doubts, the same fears, the same hesitation that caused them to miss it the first time. And listen carefully, this moment requires a different version of you. It requires awareness, not assumption. It requires clarity, not confusion. It requires you to see what is actually in front of you instead of what you think it might become based on the past. Because if you react from old patterns, you will recreate old outcomes. And your heart needs this right now, because what is being offered to you again is not meant to be handled the same way. You've grown since then. You've learned things you didn't understand before. You've experienced enough to recognize what feels aligned and what doesn't. And this is where that growth matters. Because now you have the ability to respond with intention instead of emotion, with awareness instead of impulse. And listen to this, opportunities like this don't stay open forever. They appear for a moment, they test your readiness, and they respond to your level of clarity. If you hesitate too long, if you overthink it, if you convince yourself that it's not real or that it will come back later, you risk watching it close again without ever fully understanding what it could have become. And your heart needs this right now, because this is not about rushing into something blindly. It's about being present enough to recognize when something is genuinely different. It's about trusting your awareness instead of your fear. It's about allowing yourself to move forward without carrying the weight of what happened before. Because this moment is not asking you to repeat the past. It's asking you to engage with the present in a new way. And that requires courage. It requires you to step beyond hesitation and into clarity, even if everything is not fully certain yet. And listen carefully. Certainty is not what creates opportunity. Awareness is. The more aware you are, the more clearly you will see what this moment actually is. And when you see it clearly, your response becomes natural. You won't have to force a decision. You won't have to question every detail. You will simply know whether it aligns with who you are now. And that's the difference. Because this time, it's not about chasing something or holding on to something that isn't stable. It's about recognizing something that has been given the chance to return in a stronger, more aligned form. So don't ignore this moment, and don't approach it casually either. Stay grounded, stay clear, stay aware of what is unfolding right in front of you. Because what you do next will determine whether this door continues to open or quietly closes again. And this time, the choice is entirely in your hands.